Some quiz topics you might expect for Lesson 1-1 quiz may include domain, range, increasing, decreasing, positive, negative, set notation, and interval notation. You learned about these in class, you practiced them on the homework, and you probably took some notes on them. A few things to remember. Domain are all the x values of a function. That will work, whether you see that graphically or through the equation, where y values are represented by the range. We oftentimes represent those x or y values using our set or interval notation. Remember, set notation starts like this, and interval notation will have the brackets or the parentheses. Positive and negative and increasing and decreasing can be confusing, so be sure you know the difference. Remember, increasing is when you have a positive slope on a function, and decreasing is when you have a negative slope on a function. Positive means when the graph is above the x-axis, so anything above would be positive, whereas anything below the x-axis would be negative. We also refer to the positive and negative answers, or the increasing and decreasing answers, only with our interval notation. If something was increasing or positive from, let's say, 1 to 8, we would always use those soft brackets. Remember, parentheses are always used for positive and negative answers or increasing, decreasing answers when a function is doing any of those things. One last hint, remember that open and closed circles represent some of our notation with our interval and set notation. For example, if I was saying anywhere after 5 up to and including 11, on a number line that might look like this: 5 with an open circle, shaded all the way to 11 with a closed circle. You may see some graphs with open and closed circles, not just on a number line. Here's one problem you might want to look over for review. We have a random function, it'll be a piecewise function, that we want to ask these 6 items on. The domain of the function would include all the x values that are included. Notice we have an arrow here, so it will go on to infinity for the x values it uses, but it does stop right here at what would be -5. So our domain would be soft parenthesis here, -5, all the way up to infinity. And infinities always have the parenthesis. Your range is the y values the function will use. We note that the lowest y value we have is right here, and that is at a -4. So we would start, -4 is our lowest value. Our highest value is up here at 1. Because this will extend and stay at the level of 1 indefinitely, we now have that as our top number. So our top y value would be 1. It can be 1 and it can be -4, so you'll notice the bracket usage. Increasing is when the function has a positive slope. So that would be right here. You have a positive slope. To note this, we're only going to look at the x values. So this point where it starts would go with the -2, and it quits up here when x is 3. So we would say it's increasing from the x values of -2 to +3. Remember, with increasing and decreasing, we only use the parentheses because at those points, it's not both increasing and decreasing. Now, decreasing on this function is where the slope would be negative, so that would be right over here. That starts at an x value of -5 and goes to that x value of -2. So we would use our interval notation from -5 to -2 with parentheses. Finally, this graph is positive or above the x-axis towards the end here. So from here to here, we have a positive graph. So we would say it is positive from the x value of 2 to the y value infinity. We'll use that soft bracket again because infinities always have soft brackets, and the x value of 2 is not above the x-axis or below the x-axis. It's right on it. For when the function is negative, that will be down here. It's always below the x-axis there. So to indicate that, we would say it is negative from the x value of -5 all the way to the x value of 2.